Today, we're jumping into a really deep and fascinating piece of writing called The Ninth Ray. This isn't just a text that asks you to have faith. It actually tries to build a step-by-step logical case for one of the biggest questions we all have. What happens next?
And really, the whole thing starts with this one simple but huge question. If the universe is this massive, maybe even eternal place, then what's the point of our little, fleeting lives? The Ninth Ray is basically one big attempt to answer that, arguing that our short time here only really makes sense if it's leading to something more.
So here's our game plan. We're going to start with the argument for society, why this belief is painted as a must-have for a happy life. Then we'll get into the internal logic of the faith itself. After that, we'll zoom out to the cosmic level to talk about justice, and then we'll land on the text's big conclusion.
All right, so let's get into our source material. The Ninth Ray is all about laying out what it calls the secret proofs for the resurrection of the dead. And it doesn't treat this as some minor detail, but as a core pillar of its entire worldview.
Now, what's so interesting about this text is its method. It doesn't just start with, believe this because I said so. No, it builds a case from the ground up. It argues that believing in the hereafter isn't just a comfort, it's a logical necessity for a happy life, a stable society, and even for the universe itself to make any sense.
So, the first major point is super practical. The text basically says that without a belief in an afterlife, our personal happiness and even the very fabric of society would just fall apart. And it tries to prove this by looking at 4 specific groups of people.
And here they are, the 4 pillars of this social argument: children, the elderly, young people, and the family. The text makes the case that every single one of these groups depends on the promise of a world to come for meaning and stability. Let's dig into how. First up, kids, the text makes a really sensitive point here. For a child, the idea of death is just terrifying. Seeing a pet, a friend, or a relative die can be this overwhelming weight that just crushes their spirit. And this is the solution the text offers. The idea of paradise completely reframes that scary loss into something comforting. It gives kids a story that helps them handle grief and find hope, turning what could be a trauma into something they can actually process, something almost beautiful. Okay, now let's jump to the other end of the timeline. For older people, the text argues that facing the end of your life can bring this deep, heavy despair. The idea that everything you've ever known and loved is about to just switch off, well, that's a source of incredible anxiety. And this is where belief in an afterlife becomes, according to the text, the ultimate comfort. It changes the narrative. The end of life isn't an end, it's a transition. This world, which could feel like a dark prison cell, suddenly becomes more like a waiting room for something eternal, bringing a sense of peace. Now, let's talk about youth. The text sees the passion and energy of young people as this incredible, powerful force, but one that could also be really destructive. If it's not guided, all of those turbulent emotions can spill over into chaos that hurts everyone.
The key word here is consequence. The argument is that the idea of hell, of a final judgment, acts as a crucial brake pedal. It's presented as this essential moral boundary that helps steer all that youthful energy away from destruction and towards something productive for society.
And finally, the family, which the text calls the mainspring of all worldly happiness. The argument here is that a truly happy family can't be built on fleeting emotions. It needs something deeper: real respect, genuine kindness, and a willingness to sacrifice for each other.
This quote is just so powerful, isn't it? The text is saying that if you see your relationships as just temporary, they can become shallow and selfish. But if you believe in an eternal companionship, well, that changes everything. It encourages a deep, unconditional love that goes way beyond looks or temporary problems, because you see the connection as something permanent. Okay, so we've looked at all the social angles. Now the text pivots, and we get to the theological heart of the matter. The claim is pretty bold. If you already accept the other basic beliefs of the faith, then believing in the hereafter isn't optional. It's a logical, unavoidable conclusion. And to drive this point home, the text points straight to the Quran. It's saying, look, this is not some fringe topic. It's central. It's everywhere. In fact, as you can see here, almost a full third of the entire scripture is talking about resurrection and the hereafter. It's a massive theme.
So then it lays out this neat little chain of logic. First, it says, the prophets have proven they're telling the truth. Second, their most consistent message right after the unity of God is that resurrection is real. So the conclusion is simple. If you believe the prophets are truthful, then you have to believe their #1 message is true too.
Okay, now the argument zooms way, way out. We're moving from scripture to the entire cosmos. The claim here is that the very nature of God and the universe we see around us pretty much demand a hereafter for any of it to make sense.
This slide really lays out the core of that cosmic argument. Without a hereafter, the text says, God's most important qualities become complete contradictions. How can you have divine justice if evil people get away with everything? How can there be divine wisdom if life has no ultimate point? And how is it divine mercy if suffering is just meaningless pain? The hereafter is presented as the key that unlocks it all, the only way for these attributes to actually mean something.
And this is the gut punch of the justice argument. We all see it, right? The world is full of unfairness. Cruel people often thrive while good people suffer. If death is just the end for both of them, then where's the justice? The text argues that a universe created by a just God absolutely requires a final courtroom, a place where all the scales are finally balanced.
So now we're at the very end, the grand finale. After weaving together these threads from society, from theology, and from the cosmos itself, the text pulls it all into one sharp, powerful conclusion. And there it is. That's the mic drop. The whole logical pyramid of the ninth ray is built to support this one direct statement. The argument is that the existence of God and the existence of the hereafter aren't two separate ideas you can take or leave. They're two sides of the same coin. One absolutely necessarily implies the other.
So as we wrap this up, the text kind of brings us full circle, leaving us with a question that points right back at our own lives. This isn't just some abstract debate. The real point is that what we believe about the final destination profoundly changes how we navigate the journey, right here, right now. It's a reminder that our vision of the end will always define our experience of the present.